Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. This is Wes from the Universal Life Church, and today I want to talk about American mental health and mass shootings. This is something that has gotten worse as time goes on, and it's becoming it's it's causing a lot of suffering for a lot of people in this country because a parent doesn't want to lose their child going to school. And when our citizens are killing each other like this, we've got to look at it, and we've got to look at it closely. And there is so much ignorance about what is going on that we have to take a look at it through the eyes of psychology, because this is mental health. It's what makes people want to kill other people in mass shootings. Now, we can try to blame guns, and we can try to blame politicians, but if you really want to understand this issue, we got to look at it through the eyes of psychology. And psychology is something I've been studying since my 20s, 20, 30 years. I have been reading and studying and talking with other psychologists as well as psychiatrists about many different mental health issues. And that's what led me into spirituality, because religion is about psychology. And, one led to another, and we're going to get into it in more detail so we can understand what's going on, because we can't fix it if we don't understand what's going on. There are some people that don't understand what's going on, and they think, and they come up with fixes that are actually worse and causing the problems to be worse. So we need to look at these. And the first thing we need to look at is that mental health in the United States, a lot of people may not know this, is the #1 country in the world with mental health problems. 1 in 5 Americans suffers with crippling depression. 1 in 5, 20%. That's massive. And 1 in 4 for women alone. They suffer from mental health problems more than men. But women aren't killing people in mass shootings. Men are. So right there, this tells us something. Because these people are not born with these. Some people may be born with mental health issues, but they're not the ones that are out there shooting and killing people. We can see by who they are and their background that these are people that were born as a baby with a normal brain, just like everybody else, and then their life experiences created these mental health problems that caused them to do mass shootings and kill other people. So we have to look at what's going on, because women are not doing it. Men are. And we have to realize that we lead the world in mental health. China and India also are in the top 3 in the world in mental health issues. And it seems wealth has something to do with it, doesn't it? Wealth-rich countries have more mental health problems, and it is linked. It's not a coincidence. You got to look at this very deeply inside our minds. All our minds, men and women's minds, are all made the same. I know people want to think that women and men have different minds. They do not. It's just like a heart. You can take a heart, that organ, out of a man, put it in a woman, and it will work fine. Brains are the same way. It's just an organ in our body, and it's not different between genders. There are some minor changes, but it's how we, testosterone and things like that can cause thinking patterns to develop in men and women differently, but at the start, they are the same. Life experiences and how we are taught is what changes our minds, our mental psyche, and can cause depression, anxiety, cause people to commit suicide, mass shootings, and all these other issues. And here in the United States, we throw medication at it. We throw pills at it to try and solve these issues. Now, I don't want to say that they don't do any good, because they may get people through tough times. And if that's what you need to make it through, that's what you need. You got to do what you got to do. There's no perfect answer. But here's what we got to understand. These pills will help you make it through a tough time, but you have to change your mind before the mental illness goes away. The pills are just like a Band-Aid. You put it over the surface, underneath the cut is still there and it's infected. The Band-Aid is just going to hide it. That's what a lot of these pills are doing. They're not actually curing anything. They're just making you manage. You have to change your mind, and you can cure yourself of depression, anxiety, and a lot of these mental health issues. Maybe not some of the more major ones like psychopathy and schizophrenia. Those are two different major mental health issues. That psychopathy and is not something you're born with. It's developed. Schizophrenia may be something you're born with because you're caught between two poles, and that could, in some instances, be something that you're born with, but in other instances it's not. It's through life experience and thought processes. So, what is the issue? That's what we want to get down to. Why is America number one? Why are men, not women, women have more mental health issues than men, but men are ones committing these mass shootings? Because the guns don't shoot themselves, as you know, and we don't want mentally ill people to get guns either. But our politicians, money first. They would rather make sure that their donators that donate to them get the money they have, and every decision they make, they're always keeping their donors in the back of their mind, so they don't make decisions that will cost them money, even if your children's life is at stake. So politicians, to me, are useless on both sides, because they're all bought. You have to make a difference. You have to go to the politician's house and drag them out into the street if you have to make the changes that are needed. You've got to vote them out and vote in the ones that are going to make changes. And they're coming. I mean, the reason we see the problems in the world today is because these changes are coming, and those that have mental health issues can't deal with it. So let's get into it. What are the issues? How are we raising boys differently than we are raising girls, so that they come out to be violent? Because they both have mental health issues at about the same rate, women even more. But men have mental health issues and they're violent. That's where the problem comes. So where does it start? They both started with the same brain. So we have to look at the seeds that were planted early on in a boy's life. And one of the biggest issues is boys get spanked more than girls. Now, spanking is just a word. It's also child abuse. You can call it spanking, you can call it discipline, you can call it corporal punishment. Doesn't matter the name you give it. If the child feels he's being abused, then it's child abuse. You're teaching a child that beating people and using violence is a way to solve your problem. This is the teachings of ignorant parents. And we know this now. Psychology has proven over and over that You don't need to hit children to teach them. That's like a caveman way of solving problems. Just smack them. You'll beat respect into them. That's why we got boys shooting up their schools. From the parents trying to beat respect into them. Because you can't get respect that way. It has to be earned. You can't beat it into somebody. So the problem starts with parents, especially the parents that think beating their kids is a way to teach them. That's not how it goes. That's the problem. Now maybe you'll start to see how big this problem is and why we lead the world in mental health issues, because these are the experiences that a child is raised in that make up his mental psyche. And there's something going on in the United States that are making mental health problems. And it starts with beating our children, thinking we're doing something good. We're not. The next thing is the three most dangerous and destructive words that you can say to a young boy growing up, trying to teach him. And those words are, be a man. Be a man. Why don't you be a man? The reason, and there's a whole movie on this called The Mask We Wear, and I recommend that you, I'll put a link in the description box for this movie, and it explains how destructive this is and what it causes for people. Now, I know what some people are saying. Oh, I was beat when I was a kid and told to be a man, and I grew up just fine. But if you're beating your kids, you didn't grow up just fine. Some people overcome these things, and not one thing is going to make somebody go off and shoot people in a school. It's all of them together with other life experiences that are creating a violent person with mental health issues. What mental health? Well, we're going to get into that. Be a man. Why is that when you're telling a child that is so destructive? Because, well, you have to define what a man is. And when we do that, what we find out is through looking at society and movies and Hollywood and how others expect men to be, they expect them to be violent. That's what society is teaching us. We expect them to be violent. You see it in the movies. And a child doesn't know what being a man is, and he doesn't know. So he's looking around to find out, okay, what does it mean to be a man? And our society tells you that you've got to be angry and violent. So that's what children do. Instead of saying be a man, you should say have some respect for yourself. That's what's lacking. Children and adults that have respect for themselves. That's where it starts. You can't give respect to other people and respect other people until you respect yourself first. And people don't understand that. They go around thinking they can beat respect into people. I'll beat you up, so then you'll respect me. That's ignorance at its height. And it's being taught, and it's still being taught, and it's widespread. I'm sure everyone listening to this knows somebody that still spanks their children. And they're not teaching them. They're teaching them violence. Use violence to solve your problem. The kid's going to grow up and hit people to solve his problem. Maybe shoot people. Maybe not. Maybe he'll overcome it, because some do. That still means it's negative teaching. And that's what we're talking about, is negative teaching. Now, here's another negative teaching. When you tell a child that you're bad, you're a bad person for doing that act. Instead of saying that act you just did is bad. There's a big, huge difference between the two. One is telling the child he's bad. The other is telling his actions are bad. In a growing mind of a child, this is very important. Because when you keep telling a child that he's no good and he's bad and what's wrong with you, the child starts to believe that there's something wrong with him. And once you believe it, then there is going to be something wrong with you. Because now you believe it. And parents are driving into their children the ideas that there's something wrong with them just by the way they're trying to teach. Now, they didn't know any better. Parents and generations before us, they just did what they knew. Doesn't make them evil people or bad people. We all make mistakes, and children can overcome them. But now we know better. Now we know right from wrong. So to not change our minds and move forward in a better way so that the future changes is silly. To just keep doing the old things and beating kids and degrading them and building up their insecurities. Because that's what it does. That's what the problems are. Depression comes from an overload of insecurities that I'm not good enough. You start comparing yourself to other people. You want to, you want the things other people have. You want to be something else. You spend hours in the mirror putting makeup on and popping pimples and primping and grooming, and you're not even doing it for yourself. All this time I see young people and even adults spend in the mirror making sure they look good enough for other people. I mean, if they're going to stay home alone at night, they're not sitting in the mirror putting makeup on. If you're staying home alone, it's only when you go out for other people. So you're not kidding anyone by saying, oh, I'm doing it for myself. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it because you're controlled by the opinions of other people. And what they think of you matters more than what you think about yourself. And that comes from not having insecurities about yourself. And this is the experiences and the teaching process. Our minds, when we are babies, are like a computer. They're empty. And as we grow, we download information in there to run that computer. If you download poor information, negative information, you're going to get negative information back. And at some point in your life, you're going to have mental distress, especially if you've been programmed information that is unnatural to how human beings are. And if you're programming violent, destructive, selfish ways into people, they're going to have mental distress because that's not how human beings are. We're social people that need to work together to survive. We work separately, we all die. And even people living alone have mental health issues just from living alone. You need other people in your life to be mentally sound. We know how the mind works now. We've studied it since the early philosophers up until now. That's what all the religions in the world are about, is trying to teach you about your mind. But people make it out to be superstitions of invisible men in the sky, and then every time they get into a trouble, they pray to an invisible man to help them, when they have everything they need to help them in themselves. It's a thing called good, and it's a thing called God, and it's within you. Not out there. I mean, it's energy. That's everywhere. It exists in stars, it exists in you, it exists in that little nuclear reactor that you have in your body that creates energy. And that's not evil, unless you make it evil. Now, I don't want to talk too long on this because I could talk all night about this subject because, like I said, psychology I've studied for 30 years. When you understand how the mind works, it helps you see the world in a different way. You see why people are doing what they're doing. You know why people have the personalities they are. You know the life experiences that it takes to be a mass shooter, or a biker, or a teacher, or a police officer, or a soldier. There are certain things that happen within your life that lead you down these paths. You know, children that, teenagers that are, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds that join the Army, they're looking for something more because their insecurities were built up from society. So they join the military to think they want to be a man. They want to be made into a man. They want to be a violent killer. And then the veterans that come out have the highest suicide rate of any profession in our country. Veterans. Mental health issues in veterans are the highest amongst any profession out there. And there's reasons for that. And I could talk all night about what goes on when young men who are insecure join a group. And they do it for good reasons, but that doesn't mean the results are good for them. As you can see, they've got mental health issues higher than anybody else. Suicide rates 1 in 4. 1 in 4 killing themselves. Why? Because they joined an organization where their conscience is going to be stripped and they're going to not make their own decisions and they're going to obey. And that's the big problem that is in the world today, is in this country, is people want others to obey, but yet they don't obey themselves. Obey who? You've got to know right from wrong and have a conscience to do the right thing. Well, soldiers have that conscience taken away because they have to follow orders, and that's what they've been taught, and that's where their path that they get broken to do it. Their conscience is stripped. So they come out of the military unconscious. Some overcome it and are able to make these decisions on their own. They can see that the orders they were given and the lifestyle they have within the military is different than civilian life because civilians don't have to obey. The citizens are the boss in this country. And you don't have to bow to authority. Soldiers have a hard time with that, making the transition. And this is something we have to look at. And here we have people out there saying, oh, what we need to do is we need to put armed soldiers in all the schools, veterans with guns. These people are insane. They're just ignorant to the fact that the mental health problems are the highest amongst them, and they want to arm them, put them in with their children. It's just insane, is what it is, because they just don't know the problems and where they're coming from. Now, negative teaching, there's a lot of it. Negative teaching, like I said, to put a child down and tell them they're dumb, rather than help them with the problems they're having and tell them that the actions are bad and not them. It's a big difference. And it's a selfish way to teach when you attack a child and tell them they're dumb and what's wrong with you and, be a man. When you're telling a child to be a man, you're telling them they're not good enough. You're not good enough. You've got to be a man. And they don't even know what this is. So they try to be like these Hollywood violent people. Or whoever else they may come across. Hopefully they'll find a good role model. But it might not be their father if he's beating them, telling them to be a man. And you can see the problems run deep in this country. The problem bigger than you think, because we have to change. We lead the world in mental health issues because we're teaching our children the wrong way. And we have to change. We can't just keep doing things that are bad and wrong just because we don't want to change. Our egos are the biggest problem because we don't want to change our minds. We defend the self every time someone comes up with an idea that's different than what we want to believe. And that's very important. Now, all these things I said, not if you spanked your child, he's not going to grow up to be a mass shooter. If you told him to be a man, the chances are he's not going to grow up to be a mass shooter. But if you do this over and over and over and severely enough, maybe they will. Because it's not the right teaching. No matter how you try to justify it to yourself that you did it and you turned out all right, it's still wrong. Because maybe you didn't turn out all right if you think beating your kids is the answer. You never learned. Now's the time. And it's time to change. These are big issues. Now we look at society and the people in this country, many of them can't even spot a psychopath when he's paraded in front of them. Donald Trump acts like a psychopath. Now, I'm not saying he is. I'm saying he acts like one because we know what a psychopath acts like. And he acts like one. That's a fact. Because I have eyes. I can see it. I have ears. Does that mean he's a psychopath? It could. But I'm not saying he is. I'm saying he acts like one. And people in this country didn't know. They voted for him. What did they think was going to happen? He goes down to the shooting and makes comments about himself. And psychopath is someone who lacks empathy and cannot empathize with another person's loss. So when he went down there and tried to make it about him, tried to score points for himself, he wasn't thinking about dead children and the parents that got slaughtered. He doesn't care. He has no empathy. And a lot of people voted for this man. The same man who mocked a disabled man and his disability. That's not having any empathy for a man who's disabled. That's horrible. People didn't care. They didn't see it. They didn't see a psychopath when it paraded right in front of them. So the problem we have in this country is big. We've got to educate ourselves about mental health. And this is a start. And share this video with someone. Like it, pass it on, let them know. Because the time has come where we cannot have our citizens gunning down our children in schools because they've been taught wrong. They've been taught to be violent. And we can all make a list of violent things in our society. We need less of them. And I hope this helps. I thank you for watching. Please subscribe so you get more of these videos, and I hope you have a great day.